So good morning and welcome to our second session, third module, where we'll be building on what we discussed last time in terms of engagement and thinking a bit more about motivation today. Before we get started, has anyone got any questions from the VLE content or anything that's come up for you since we had the discussion on Monday? Or if you've been watching it back, I think you were all here on Monday, weren't you? So any questions before we get started? No? Okay. All right, so I'm just going to make your videos smaller so I can see the so we talked last time about, employee engagement and what is it and why is it important, and thinking about ultimately that employee engagement is about creating those conditions where our staff, our teams can really offer more of their skills, their experience, their capability, and their potential. So we're creating conditions for everyone to be at their best and achieve their potential. And we explored those 4 enablers for engagement, thinking about from that research, those 4 key pillars that we can think about what can we be doing more of or less of in order to really enable our teams and their engagement. So today we're going to think a bit more about motivation at an individual level. So perhaps also thinking about our individual motivation and the motivation of our teams. And before we get started, I'd invite you to have a couple of minutes individual reflection and think back or think to a time now, to a time when you felt really, really great. You felt really motivated and excited to be at your best. And then thinking about what enabled you to be at your best. What did you do in that situation? And what did your manager do in that situation? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about a time when you felt really motivated and what was happening in that situation. So grabbing a pen and paper, jotting that down, anything that comes to mind, time when you felt really motivated. Okay, just a few moments left to finish your reflections. Okay. So would anybody like to share their experience of a time when they felt really great and kind of what was enabling that, what you were doing, what your manager was doing? Would anybody like to share? Anyone? No? Okay. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to move on.
Start.
Yeah. Sorry, Victoria. Do you want to? Hi.
I'll start.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay. Well, I think that what can I remember from now on and everything as I think I was the most motivated always to do something or anything, any tasks that I knew that there will be some outcome that will be so visible and will be so like, wow, did I do it myself? And you can see it immediately. Even a simple mopping, when you see that there has been a spill and you just mop it off, this is just the simplest example.
And it's all clean and tidy and you can see like the result of your efforts.
Yeah. And regarding the managers, I think I was very lucky. And through entire my career, I really had only one manager that was just, there was not just the support from that person, but it was that person would put you down every single day. There was just one person, and I'm very lucky that I'm not working with that type of person anymore. And I'm very lucky to have a very good managers that actually supports you. So from my side, I'm definitely being supported, and I do enjoy that. Helps working.
Yeah, great. So there's something about sort of seeing the results of our efforts, but also the manager playing quite a big role in that motivation as well sometimes. Okay, great. Thank you, Victoria. Any other thoughts, any other comments that anyone would like to share from your experience of feeling motivated and excited and at your best? Antonia.
For me, motivated really a lot if I have some goals. And the aim to reach my goals, it's really motivated me. I know why I'm doing, for what I'm doing this. And as well, I love to see if in job I done something. I love to see this, it's really done. It's and I did it. Our performance very good, and I'm happy, and I got more and more power.
Great.
To go.
So I'm just going to pop Marina. Welcome, Marina. I'm just popping you on mute. We're just reflecting on a time when we felt really inspired and motivated, and thinking a bit about what helped us, what did our managers do, what were those situations. Antonia, great. So also you were saying like having goals and being able to kind of know that you're achieving your goals was really motivating for you. Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else want to share any of your experience? Okay. So what we're going to do is move on to looking at some of the theories of motivation, and then think about perhaps looking back on your experiences. What do you notice? Maybe some of those elements may or may not have been present at those times when you felt really motivated. I'm just going to do a quick poll. So there are a couple of videos on motivation on the VLE. I just want to check in and see how many of you have watched those before this session, just so that I know kind of where your understanding's at. So if there's a quick poll on the screen, if you could just vote, that would be great. Then I just have an idea of where you are in terms of the VLE learning. So one more of you that needs to vote? Okay, so it looks, let's share the results, shall we? So it looks almost 50-50 because one person didn't vote. So about half, like just over half of you have watched the videos, half of you haven't. So I would encourage you after today's session to check in on the videos. What I'll do is a quick recap around the theories, and then we'll move on to think about what can we do as managers. So one of the videos on the VLE is by Dan Pink's work. So he wrote the book Drive, and there's the surprising truth about what motivates us. And what he argues is that ultimately what really motivates us comes down to three key elements around autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So he talks about autonomy being kind of that desire to be self-directed. So if we really want to have engagement, then giving the opportunity to employees to have an element of self-direction will improve employee engagement, and ultimately that's what a key driver for our motivation. Also mastery, so kind of the urge to get better at stuff. So the urge to feel like we're building our skills and are able to see the results of our efforts. And also the sense of purpose. So feeling like we're making a contribution. And again, similarly, sort of seeing the results of our efforts. And I think, Victoria, you know, you're sort of saying like it's really satisfying when you get something done and you can see immediate results. And so he argues that these sort of three principles are really ultimately what drives employee motivation, and sort of makes a call to think about for managers, for organizations, companies, to think about what can you be doing as managers to provide more opportunities for staff to have a feeling of more self-direction, to be able to build their skills and feel like they are developing and growing, and that they feel like they're making a positive contribution, understanding that connection to the bigger picture. So thinking then in our roles as managers and leaders, if we're saying that these are the key elements around motivation, what can we do then as managers to try and create those conditions that help our teams to feel like they have autonomy, they have some sense of purpose, and they're able to build their skills? So thinking, how many are we? We're 8. I'm going to put you into pairs to think about what is it that you can do as managers to help clarify the purpose for your teams, for your staff. How can you provide some opportunities for mastery, so for building skills? How can you provide opportunities for autonomy, so to feel sort of some elements of self-direction? So have that discussion for all. So maybe take a piece of paper and split it into 4. So autonomy, mastery, purpose. And then I'd also encourage you maybe to have a little bucket or a box or something for anything else. So is there anything else that we can be doing to help improve and motivate our teams? And then be prepared to share back your ideas about what you can be doing as managers with the rest of the group. So take some notes, agree who's going to share, just be prepared to share that back to us as a group. Kinga, I think you keep dropping in and dropping out to see that she's rejoining us. So we'll be 3 pairs and 1 3 if Kinga keeps dropping in and out. So I'll send you off into breakout rooms. You have 20 minutes. Has anybody got any questions before we go into those breakout rooms? It was a very quick recap of the theory around it. There is the video and a lot more content on the VLE. But I think it's important for us to kind of think about practically, what are we going to be, thinking about what can we be doing to put this into practice? Has anyone got any questions before we set off into breakout rooms? Okay, I'm just reassigning the rooms. Okay, I will set you off 20 minutes. If you've got any questions, raise your hand in the room or come back into the main room. Also, if you want to, you can create a whiteboard in your breakout rooms. I don't know if any of you feel confident with that. So if you wanted to type up on the in your breakout rooms, you can do that. And then just make sure you save it or screenshot it, and then you can bring it back to the main room. And if you want to present your discussion that way, more than welcome. Does anyone feel confident with that? If you have a go, have a play whilst you're in your breakout rooms, and I look forward to hearing the results of your discussions. So I'll send you off 20 minutes. Enjoy. Welcome back. How I know that a few of you had internet issues. So I saw a lot of you jumping in and out. So I hope that that wasn't too disruptive for your discussions. But I'd love to hear back from you in terms of, what do you think that we can do as managers to really create those conditions to help our teams feel motivated? Did anybody manage to do fancy whiteboard things in your breakout rooms? Anybody want to share fancy whiteboards?
We couldn't figure out a specific whiteboard, but Nadia shared her screen and we just did the annotate thing. Is that what you meant? Or
cool. Yeah, you can do that. Yes. Yeah. So you, basically, if you share your screen, then it comes up as a white screen, doesn't it? And then you can annotate. Did you manage to save that, Nadia?
No, because it impossibile. Aspetta, once. Okay. No, I save it. Can you, Kathleen? Can you hear me? No.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I save it, but I think they say you have to share it because you are still typing it.
So if I've unshared my screen, if you want to share your screen, then maybe you can share it with us.
No.
Oh.
Try with your.
I'm gonna try.
Try. No.
Is that screenshot there?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
Try and there we go.
Yay.
Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we've got a bit of a double Inception video situation going on here. So yeah, we said for managers to clarify purpose, that SMART goal setting thing is a good idea of how people should be laying out what they want you to do, from specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-oriented goals, just to make sure that everyone knows exactly what they're actually trying to achieve, and treat people as real people rather than just a number, like an anonymous number. Make sure that they know what purpose, what they bring to the table type thing, and that they're not just a demotivated anonymous little number down in the corner. Make sure they know their value and what they actually are going to be, how important they can be to the wider goal. And then we got a bit weren't quite sure of the distinction between the second 2 points, but I was thinking of a previous example from my work, not on a boat, but we used to have every few months they'd arrange a brainstorming kind of day, and send everyone off in we wouldn't be doing any work, we'd all go off in our little groups of 2 or 3, sometimes off to the pub for a little brainstorming session, and then everyone comes back in the afternoon and presents all the other ideas with a specific goal in mind, but everyone would come back, present all their ideas, and it gives everyone that, when you trust people to come up with the good ideas, they're more likely to come up with the good ideas if they've got that autonomy and opportunity to come up with things themselves. So that was something that worked pretty well in a company that I worked for, but that was the only specific example that I thought of. And then,
Yeah, I think that's a great example.
and then Kinga or Nadia, anything else?
During our talk, we couldn't actually put an example. We put an example for the autonomy, to possibly, you know, encourage one of the students to set up a table, for example, and then you can give constructive feedback when necessary, giving them an opportunity to sort of learn. But we couldn't put an example for mastery. Like if you're giving somebody the flexibility and, you know, giving the opportunity to come with an initiative, then it also gives them an urge to get better at something. So we couldn't actually distinguish the difference in between, like it links together, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So
yeah.
how can you, what example could you use for mastery that doesn't actually link up to autonomy?
Yeah.
Oh, that is our question to you, Kristen.
Yeah. I'm gonna push it back out to the rest of the group and see if they've got some examples. But what I would say is that they probably are going to be linked anyway. So whilst you're doing one thing, it might be building on the other elements as well. And I think that example that you were giving is a bit of both, isn't it? So it's a bit of autonomy, but it's also building skills, helping people get better at what they do. So helping with that mastery as well. Nadia, have you got anything else to add?
No, I think especially for motivate, the person, I think you have to have, in a way, to explain which one is your inner, what it really motivates you, So for me, it's the sense of duties. What it really motivates me, is the sense, is make me feel better, in a way.
Yeah.
So sometimes I try, to ask, to the person that I work with, what it really is important for them,
Yeah, that's a really important point, and we talked about that a bit on Monday, and we'll come on to talk a bit more about that as well. Is that ultimately these are kind of very broad pots, aren't they? And but what motivates me will be different from you, will be different from Kinga. And so the importance of getting to understand what is it that people, what does motivate individual, what's important to individuals as well. Yeah. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Caitlin, Kinga, Nadia. Excellent, thank you. So then coming on to Antonia and Sophie, anything to add there? And do you have any specific examples of mastery, for instance? This group were asking, how do we distinguish?
So no, it was all very similar when it comes to like the different ones: purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So purpose, setting a, like from master, we put lead by example as well. So like obviously you want your junior students and that to learn off of you, and that's in all day every day, so basically lead by example, motivational games. Do
you have any specific examples around
mastery? Not really.
So you said leading by example and
in-house training days, things like that. Organized courses, constructive feedback.
So around mastery, it might be also, so I think there is something about role modeling. I think there's something about shadowing. I think there's on-the-job learning, but it might also be some formal training as well that can support that as well. Antonia, anything to add? Any comments?
No, about mastery, Victoria, or Sophie, sorry. Sophie said everything. Yeah. This formal course, we just said organized courses. Organized courses, like formal courses and everyday courses. I like idea from Sophia. She got as well some example from another members. Motivations games. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So about mastering, that's all.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Sophie, Antonia.
Thank
you. George, Marina, what else have you got? What else can you add?
We can run through some bits. So for autonomy, we talked about job descriptions. So in the SMS, there should be job descriptions. So having a framework or a guideline of what is expected of your role on board. And then that gives people quite a bit of freedom as well to kind of fill in the gaps for themselves. And then taking that down to the next level, I always harp on about one-on-one meetings and the same kind of thing. So going through somebody's weekly job list and maybe giving a bit of guidance and trying to fill up on bits there. And then that leaves them to do what they need to do for the week. And then Marina added, you know, the next level from that is daily schedules. So within her department, for example, a daily schedule that you're not necessarily micromanaging each individual task, but giving people the freedom to, here's your daily schedule, this is what you need to achieve, and then they can kind of manage themselves. We did talk about the hesitation. Obviously, for myself, I'm dealing with heads of departments, and Marina said that she does deal with some more junior stewardesses where I don't necessarily have that so much. So too much freedom, it has to be reined in on some people, and maybe a bit more dedicated guidance for depending on what group of people you're leading.
Yes.
And then in mastery, again, we touched on training and courses, and I was mentioning about shadowing. So just having somebody come up and, as I said in this classes before, for example, the chief officer driving the boat gives them, I would say, an urge to get better at it and insight into it, and quite a satisfying thing for them to do. But Marina touched on quite an important bit here about, you know, you can be doing on charter or something long hours, long days, and sometimes reading courses and things like that people are not interested in. So depending on how you give them the sort of information, and then we talked about more about sharing responsibilities and different people doing different jobs on board, and using that as a way to kind of urge people to get better at stuff, not just through reading. Marina, do you want to talk more about that part?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking at my point of view, being the stewardess and not being the manager. I can see that the girls are quite motivated. If they're during the season, it's really kind of like boring if it's a long season and you every day you do the same job, and you know, especially in housekeeping, and you wipe the whole day. So it's quite motivating for the girls to do something else, some other task, like from service or laundry or even, I don't know, deck or something. So it's motivational, it's inspiring, it's a kind of you're getting more skills, you're more advanced, you know stuff. So even in a point when for some reason you're low on crew, because the crew knows a lot of stuff on the boat, you know, they can cover the other crew that are not here. So it's a motivation and plus in the job. Also, I don't know if it's a good thing to mention now, but giving freedom to the crew, from my point of view, when I would organize the time of the girls in the interior, I would not set, I don't know, I think setting the time, okay, we start from 8, at 10 we have coffee break, and 12 we have lunch or something, and then again coffee break. I don't really think it's a good management skill, you know. I would go with you know, these are the tasks that I want you to do today. Please finish by 5 and you manage your own time. I don't know if that will work or not. Maybe it's a stupid question at the moment, but it just crossed my mind, some of the things that I was thinking. Maybe Kathleen, you can help me with this. Christine.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that it's often about being just really clear about your expectations and what the boundaries are. So, and I also think to be really annoying in this way, you know, it depends. So for some people, they really need that structure around, you know, I really need to know that I'm having a break at 10 and 12 and 4 and we finish at 6. For others, they just want that freedom, that autonomy. I think you know, and also to the point that you and George raised about, it also depends on the levels of seniority and perhaps experience as well. So if you give someone like full reign, and then, you know, that could have quite negative, if they're not clear about what are my boundaries here, what are the expectations, what do I need to achieve. So I think, again, it's about kind of coming back to that conversation with the individual about what they like, and also being clear about your expectations as the manager in terms of, you know, this is what we need to achieve today. It's 9 o'clock now, you know, lunch will be available from 12 till 2. So, you know, choose when you know, self-organize around who's taking lunch when. I know some of you prefer to take lunch later, whatever, but you know, I would expect for all of this to be finished at 5. I'll check in with you at 3 to see how you're doing. Yeah, I think that being really rigid about it probably doesn't help with the feelings of autonomy. But
I find it quite motivational also for the crew when you give them like, okay, here are the tasks, but finish by 12, you know, just to make sure that it will be done. And I don't know, I find it like quite motivational for the crew.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying about making sure that there's a bit of variety in what they're doing as well is also motivational, and that helps them to build skills. And back to that point around mastery, that yeah, absolutely. Like if we think about how adults learn, like ultimately only 10% of our learning comes from formal courses, you know, instructional learning. So 70% of our learning comes from on the job. So thinking about how can we create those opportunities as managers for that. So, you know, George's example of letting the first officer drive the boat to then, you know, really kind of get the excitement around, you know, getting better, you know, variety of jobs, rotation, shadowing. What are the opportunities that you have in your existing duties? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help, Marina?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good. Great. Okay, so some really good examples of what we can do as managers. Did anybody come up with anything else that kind of didn't fit in those neat pots? Is there anything else that we can be doing? Did anything come up in when you were doing your reflection about times when you felt really motivated? Can you see like those 3 elements in your examples, or was there something else going on at the times when you were feeling really motivated? Anyone? So there wasn't anything else that came up for you in a different category? No? Okay, so to recap then in terms of what can we be doing as managers, so just to help us think through. So, you know, in terms of clarifying purpose, you know, really helping people have clarity of direction and being clear and setting expectations, and how you can kind of help them to connect with the work and what the kind of overall aims and objectives are of the department, of the wider team, of the yacht. And definitely, as you said, about the setting of SMART objectives and using like job descriptions and things as getting it down on paper and then being clear about what are the expectations, what's expected of me and my performance, and then giving some freedom around how that's done. So building the mastery of like individuals and teams. So casting our minds back to last week when we talked about feedback. So I think, you know, feedback is one of the really key skills here in terms of helping others to learn, to develop, to grow, to build their skills. So understanding what they're doing well, so giving them feedback about what's working, and then also giving them feedback around, you know, what they could be doing more of or better or differently to help them learn and grow. Also thinking about, you know, how can you be using more of perhaps a coaching methodology? And we began to touch on that last Friday, and we'll pick that up again tomorrow in our Friday session, to really think about how can you use more of a coaching approach to really develop skills and abilities and sort of talent in your team. tapping into like diversity of experience and thought. So Caitlin's example of being given kind of a brief and invited to go away, think about it, and employee voice was heard. So if you think back to those enablers that we discussed on Monday, that third enabler around feeling like we have a voice and our ideas are heard and we can contribute to that. But also, just because I'm the manager doesn't mean I've got the best ideas. So really sort of tapping into everybody else's thinking and ideas. So building team collaboration wherever possible. So what that means in terms of ways of working as a team and how you make decisions, where people can input into ideas. I think one caveat there, one thing to bear in mind is employee voice and inviting experience and ideas is very positive, but where there is too much of it, it can also be a challenge where people feel like they just challenge everything. I need to put in my ideas, my idea is best. So sometimes that takes a bit of management. And I guess that's also about coming back to setting expectations around where you can input and give ideas and kind of where I might make the final decision. And also about resolving conflict. And we'll come on to talk about conflict a bit more in a couple of weeks. That's module 6, when we think about like, how do we work collaboratively? How do we manage conflict? I think conflict in its widest sense is ultimately just differences of opinions. I think sometimes we think of conflict as like, you know, when it does get really heated. But I think it's often about hearing the different views and finding a positive way of kind of everybody feeling heard and finding a way forward. In terms of autonomy, you all had some great ideas around that. And I think one of the key things of autonomy is also around delegation. So, you know, delegating some tasks, helping individuals to do different things, as a number of you talked about, helping teams to get involved in some of your duties, giving them exposure and a bit of a stretch assignments around, you know, would you like to be involved in this? Would you like to lead on this today? And I'll step back. You know, I think you know what you're doing. I'm here if you need support. So one of the key ways around creating autonomy is also to be delegating more. So any questions around that? Around things that we can be doing as managers to really help our teams to feel motivated in their roles? Any questions? So I think one of the key things as a manager we can do, and we do keep touching on this, is around ultimately under all of those 3 areas is ultimately it's about having a conversation with the individuals. So making sure that you've got that regular 2-way communication and that you're checking in and having those conversations about what is it that is important for those individuals. So Nadia was saying she often does that. George mentioned that last week about, you know, really tapping into what is the hopes and dreams of your team. So, and everybody will be different. You might have a team of 4, 6, 8, 10. They'll all be motivated by slightly different things. So it's about understanding what are their drivers, and what can you be doing to create those conditions. But it's really important, I can't, you know, about the significance of just having a conversation, making sure that you understand what it is that kind of lights them up, that they're interested in. It's always going to be different. So checking in with your team regularly about, and it doesn't have to be in a formal kind of one-to-one, you know, monthly meeting, but that you're spending time to get to know and understand what it is that motivates them. So we talked about, you know, one of the key things about giving clarity around direction and purpose is about objectives. So being clear about what are my goals, what is it that I need to achieve. On Monday, we talked about the 4 enablers of engagement and thinking about that connection to the strategic narrative. So understanding what is the bigger picture here, what is my purpose. Antonia talked about how she was excited when she felt like she was achieving her goals and she had purpose. She knew what she was achieving and how it connected to that bigger picture. And if we think about this in a bit, perhaps a bit more of a corporate setting, but it's still applicable, is that, you know, at the top, we might have like, what is our overall purpose? And then that might fit into what are our sort of overall strategic plans for the next 5-10 years. And then how that then connects into what might be the divisional strategy. So if we're thinking about this in yachts, I mean, it might be like the overall holding companies sort of strategic plans, and then how that fits down into the yachts or private households or whichever entity that you might be working in. So kind of what's our overarching kind of strategy? And then how does that fit into your department plans? So interior, exterior. What does that mean for your team? So some small team plans. And then what does that mean for the individuals in that team? And then that kind of helps me to understand, okay, so what is it that I need to do on Monday? But I understand that what I'm doing on Monday and how that connects back up to that bigger picture. So if we think back to that example of, you know, the cleaner at NASA, when asked, what do I do? You know, I put men on the moon. He was really clear that what he does on a Monday morning, cleaning the floors, helping everyone have a clean workspace, ultimately connects back into the overall picture. So that's something that really helps us to feel motivated when we understand, you know, why is it that I have to Q-tip the entire interior by Monday? It's because it fits in with our overall objective of being, you know, of ultimate guest experience. Yeah. So when we're setting goals, this is a useful methodology to use. I'd just like to check in, like, has everybody, who has had experience of setting goals and objectives? Maybe pop in the chat a yes, or come off mic, and who has had experience of setting objectives? Can you pop something in chat, or jump off mic, or raise your hand? Have you had experience? George has. Sophie has. Nadia, have you? Caitlin, Antonia, Kinga. Kinga has. Victoria, I can't see you. Okay, so a few of you have. I'm not sure about the others. Kinga says yes. Okay, so has anyone used SMART before in terms of when you're thinking about setting your objectives? Anyone use SMART? Hands up. So I can see Kinga, yes. One, yeah, Sophie, yes. Okay. So when we're thinking about setting objectives and, you know, trying to be clear about what it is that needs to be done. So this can just help us double check when we're setting an objective, like, I want to improve my performance. Is that specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it realistic? So we can just use this method as a way of checking in and really drilling down and being fleshing out what it is that's underneath perhaps that overall goal. So Victoria, internet's bad today, everyone started lockdown. Yes, indeed. So when we're thinking about setting our objectives, just making sure that perhaps we're using this framework to check back in on, like, is it specific or is it very general? What is the kind of who, what, when, where, how? So really kind of defining the goal as much as you can. Is it measurable? So by when does something need to be achieved? Is this something that you can track? Is it time related? Or kind of, we want to increase our guest experience by 10%. We want to get to 100%. How can you measure whether you've been successful or not? And then, is it actually attainable? So how are you going to achieve this? So make sure that it's not too easy and also not too hard, because it's pretty demotivating if we set ourselves really, really high overachieving goals and we can't achieve them. And then also, is it relevant? So is it worthwhile? Bit of a reality check here around is it attainable? Is it relevant? And then also timely. So by when do you need to achieve your goals? And on the VLE, there's a form that helps you sort of break this down in terms of, you know, what is your overall objective, and then some questions to help you think that through. You might want to take a screenshot of this now, because we'll go into having a quick go at practicing writing some SMART objectives. So then thinking,
Kristen, sorry,
yes,
do you mind
yeah,
going back a page? I was just about to take a photo.
yeah.
Thank you.
This one, or this way? Which way, Sophie? Left, right, left, right. Here, okay. Everyone got a screenshot? Okay. So we're going to have a practice at writing an objective. So thinking about in your current role, you could either use one of your current objectives. You could make one up if you want. You could maybe think about a personal development objective. So what do you want to achieve in terms of your personal development? You might have begun to write one at the beginning of this program. So when we wrote your learning and development objectives at the beginning of the program, you might want to go back to that. If you're a manager, you might like to try and write an objective about your people management. So what is it about your people management that you want to achieve? So coming back and thinking, you know, maybe writing down what is it that you want to achieve. And at that point, it might be quite vague and quite top line. And then coming back to think about, you know, does it detail exactly what needs to be done? Do I need to get a bit more specific about the who, the what, the how, the why? How can I measure this objective? What will it be from and to? How can I track my progress? Is it achievable? Checking in on the, you know, is it really achievable? Can I do it? Let's not sign up to something that's not possible. Is it relevant? Does it fit with the objectives of the team, of your personal career development? And when, you know, how is this time bound? How and by when do we need to achieve this? Any questions? Any questions? So what I'll do is I will put you into, we are floating between 8s and 9s. I'll put you into pairs, and there'll probably be 1, 3. You might be quiet for a bit whilst you're in that breakout room, whilst you're writing it through. But then you can also maybe ask questions, maybe share your objective with each other, and perhaps challenge each other a little bit around, you know, how could you be more specific on that? By when do you need to do it? So share your objectives with each other, and perhaps co-coach each other about what could you do to refine that objective a bit more. Any questions before I send you off into breakout rooms? Let's recreate these rooms. Sorry, I've got a message down here. Okay, Caitlin's off to get someone at the door. Okay, so we've got 3s. Hang on, sorry, 1 second. We redo these rooms. George and Victoria, you keep falling together in my breakout rooms. Trying to split you up. Okay, let's have a go there. Okay, so 10 minutes, having a go, sharing your objectives, and then share with us your experience when you come back. Off you go. Okay, welcome back from your groups. So how did you get on writing your objectives? How was it to keep it smart or not? I'm going to come to Antonia and Marina first. How did you get on?
I'm on. I think we set a goal, like personal goal. Me personal, I put a personal goal, and we talk about if we are in a position of a manager. So should I give examples or?
Yeah, I mean, or just how did you get on with it? Did you find it easy? Were you able to use the SMART framework?
Yes, it's kind of, I have to be honest, I haven't really thought of all of this when I'm setting up my personal goals.
Yes.
It's just like, okay, I want to get there, but not how specific, who, what, where, when. So yeah, it's a good thinking. We both have some personal goals that we want to achieve. Sorry, but this
That's
one
okay.
is want to buy property. So we want to buy property and move somewhere and live there.
Okay. So you have a shared objective. Yeah.
Yeah, so we said from this month until that month next year, we need to save that amount of money from our salary. So we will buy the property so we can move and live there. So it's kind of like, I think all the aspects of the SMART goals covered. And I think from manager point of view, if you guide yourself but by this one, you kind of direct the people in a good way, so you will expect from them the job to be done, and in a way how you present it, how you actually ask from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, SMART is a way of kind of setting motivational goals, isn't it? Yeah. Brilliant.
Yes, yeah. So you kind of cover yourself the job to be done.
Yes, yeah. Antonia, anything to add?
No, because like Marina explained everything what we had discussion in this room.
just honestly, I didn't understand a lot of what is timely.
Okay.
Measure I have to do from these, for example, from and to and when, then it will be finished timely. It's completely done. Yeah.
So
Completely performed.
or sort of by when do you want to achieve it? So giving a time to when you want to achieve it. So you might say, I want to buy a property, but is that next year, in 5 years, in 10 years? You know, or I want to be a purser, is that in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? So, you know, by the end of the year, I will have achieved this, or within the next 3 months, I will have achieved this. So by January 2020, by July, yeah.
Clear, yeah, clear.
Time frame.
So yeah, Marina told everything. Marina said.
Great. Thank you, Marina and Antonio. Coming to let's come to Kinga. Victoria, how did you get on in setting a SMART objective?
All right, so we just chose one and very common, I guess, objective. We just went through the SMART system and both of us talked about it and just added things and to see how we can work with that objective. So basically the objective is starting detailing and setting up the master cabin following the checklist, and delegated to the lead housekeeper and 3 juniors. One of them can be green, so they can learn and absorb the information that can be given by the other stewardesses plus the lead housekeeper. It's a boss off time, so there's always a rush, I would say, though, but it's not a crazily moment.
Yeah.
So the measurable is obviously once master cabin cleaning is complete, it's clean and shiny and you see the result. It's quite kind of easy to see the result. So attainable, it's very reasonable enough, I would say, to make boss happy and people happy entirely. Once the boss happy, everybody's happy. Relevant. So is it relevant? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And timely. So complete detailing by the end of today and complete setting up tomorrow before lunch. And with 4 people, it's very achievable. So
great.
And hopefully that green person will be able to learn.
Stretching them in terms of their mastery as well.
Yeah.
Kinga, anything to add? How did you find using the framework? Was it helpful, not helpful, easy, hard?
I think it's always helpful. I let Victoria speak majority of the time because I personally haven't had anyone to do the SMART goals for. Personally, so I think it always happened with me that I always struggle with SMART objectives. I knew the long-term goal, but in order to get there, wasn't a struggle. You know, I think one of the person already said we all have like personal goals, but I think most importantly is the measurable part, where going back to where you started and where you are now. I think that's the key thing, to actually see, you know, okay, you've done that, you got where you are, now you know for a fact that motivate you, that inner motivation that you will be able to achieve whatever you put your mind to. I personally struggled. Victoria didn't. She came up with the example, very relevant to the course, and but yeah.
Great. But I mean, it's a framework that we can use to help us think through what are the steps that we need to take, and also to break that down for our teams. So we might be setting SMART objectives for our teams, but we might also be setting them for ourselves in terms of what's our kind of career development, our personal development, what do we want to do in terms of like our fitness and well-being, but kind of breaking it down into, you know, rather than just saying, I want to get fit, like, okay, well, what does that mean and by when? And, you know, so just breaking down some of those steps. But yeah, it was easy to focus on that bigger picture sometimes. Great. Okay, thank you, Kinga, Victoria. George, Sophie, how did you get on?
Yeah, very well. We both had 2 different, George was more of a professional in his job goals, SMART smart, and mine was personal. So should I go first, George, or do you want to go first?
Yeah, you can carry on if you want.
Okay, so my one was, I would like to run a marathon by end of 2021 by daily training and monitoring. Is it attainable? Yes, because I've got 2 legs and I have the willpower to do it. Why is it relevant? Yeah, it's for personal achievement, personal satisfaction of after 2 years of training. And then for the timely, I'd like to be able to do this by the end of 2021. So, yeah.
Fantastic. How did you find using the framework? Have you used it before, Sophie?
Yeah, I have used it before. I found it, yeah, it's like you're saying, it's breaking it down, realizing you know, some goals might be, I've used it before where I've set myself maybe too high goals, and then after it's okay, you know, yeah, it's just breaking it down and making you realize it's achievable. Yeah, small steps, exactly. And yeah, so yeah,
great.
Find it easy.
Thank you, Sophie. George, how did you get on?
Yeah, it definitely helped quite a bit. I found it interesting. As Sophie said, we took 2 different approaches. Mine was more work orientated and has personal, and it completely could work for both situations, was adaptable for that. I haven't actually used it before, but actually, without wanting to share too much information, I was actually speaking to one of the crew members on board recently, and they were telling me about how they wanted to lose weight, and they were talking about what they wanted to kind of achieve, and we ended up both falling on the fact that we needed like a measurable a number, like he said, like, oh, I can do this when this happens, but it was a very ambiguous kind of thing he said. So we said, well, you know, if you get to this percentage body fat or this weight, then you could do that. And it was quite interesting that we both ended up in a similar kind of thing to this without actually, I didn't have
without using the framework.
And having gone through it now, I mean, mine was more about it's not delegating, but instructing the chief officer to train the deck department in tender driving, which is something that's quite big for us on board. Lots of tenders, lots of deckies, and about it, how we can measure it. We have like a matrix on board, so it's very measurable on board. Attainable, obviously, it's what their qualifications are. They should be able to do that, or should be able to learn and get in the relevant boats. Relevant, of course, it's the job. And then timely, we can objectify and say, by this winter season, you know, we want to have these people driving this different person on board, and by the end of it, these many people driving the boss, or something along those lines. So it definitely helps me fill out a very common request on board.
Yes. Great. Yeah, so I mean, it can really be used as that sort of checklist around, you know, when we're setting either for ourselves, and particularly I think sometimes around our personal goals, we can set ourselves quite unrealistic goals at times, like I'm gonna run a marathon by next month, whereas Sophie's being very realistic about by which time frame she can do it, or I'm gonna lose a stone by Christmas or something, you know, like, is that realistic, and what are some of the small steps that can go with that? And then also thinking with our teams, like if we set huge goals, that's quite, you know, we all need some stretch, but if it's too big, it's demotivating, and if we're not really clear about how we're going to do that, then also be like, you know, can feel a bit lost. So this is a checklist that we can use when we're setting either for ourselves or for our teams to think about, you know, how can we make these goals motivational and feel like we're also making progress towards something.
And motivation and progress, I think that's the keys, because I just set a goal about a week ago to go on a diet and be good before Christmas. Guess what? I had a whole on pizza yesterday.
Yeah, and then you fall off, and then you get demotivated, and then you're like, oh, I just won't even bother anymore. Whereas if it's like small and slow, then that kind of small steps builds and builds and builds. So don't forget that, Victoria. Break down the goal. Great. So, I mean, setting objectives is one of the ways to, as we said, like connect people into the bigger purpose, and also to help them be clear about what it is that they need to do. When we're setting objectives for others, another thing just to bear in mind is there can be 3 types of objectives. So something around initiating, so perhaps setting somebody a goal, an objective to like start something new perhaps, which is exciting and motivating. There'll always be maintaining, so kind of continuing, maintaining the work kind of objectives. And then developing, where kind of how can you improve some of that existing work. So sort of thinking about how when you're setting objectives for your teams, kind of using those 3 types to help them feel like you know, they're contributing to the bigger purpose and that it's motivating for them. Remembering that kind of setting goals is ultimately part of good performance management, and as managers, you know, we're there to help our teams learn and grow, and that good performance management ultimately, you know, it helps everybody understand what we're trying to achieve, help us understand how we can achieve the goals, understand what skills and competencies we might need, but also what do we need to develop more of. Helps us to be clear around what standards of performance are required of us, how we're doing. So if we talk about giving and receiving regular feedback, that we know that what we are doing well and maybe how we need to develop and grow. And I think one of the key things about maintaining those regular conversations is also when performance does drop or isn't meeting expectations, that you're having those regular conversations and that it doesn't become too big of a problem, that you're able to resolve it and address it. When somebody goes off course, you're able to do a course correct and kind of get them back on track quickly, rather than it becoming quite a big issue. So we've talked about before, you know, looking at this kind of overall, the benefits of performance management, and goal setting really being one of those key elements of it, and making sure that we're having that meaningful dialogue, giving that ongoing feedback, holding each other to account, recognition of when people are doing well. I think it's important to remember that we all like to be recognized in different ways. So bear that in mind when you're managing a team, that some people, you know, want quite flamboyant recognition and others less so. So just bear that in mind. That ultimately it will help us to have motivated staff who are able to develop their careers, helps you to retain crew, and understand how people might develop within your structures, and that ultimately that we've got a great place to work. I think one of the key things to remember is that there should never be any surprises. So if we're having regular two-way conversations, giving and receiving feedback, it means that there shouldn't be that kind of once a year sit down meeting when suddenly you're told that perhaps your performance isn't up to scratch, or perhaps something that you've been doing isn't in line with expectations. So I'd say, you know, maintaining that regular two-way conversations, giving and receiving and feedback, there should never really be any surprises. Remembering, as we talked about last week, that, you know, as Kenneth Blanchard argues, like the majority of the role of a manager is about giving and receiving feedback, and that he says it's 3 things that ultimately you do. It's establishing those clear-cut goals, so people are clear about what they're doing, so we can link that back to objectives. That we're praising good performance when it happens, so giving feedback around that, and then also supporting performance when it fails to achieve its goals. So again, giving feedback when people go off course. Remembering as well that we want to be catching people doing something right. So catching people in that moment of when they're doing something well, that you're really appreciating someone's efforts, that you're giving them that feedback in the moment. And also a quick reminder around those 3 principles of when you're giving feedback, about focusing on the observable behavior, that you're being specific, and that also it's balanced in terms of the ratio of developmental and affirming feedback. I just wanted to share with you quickly, I'm mindful of time. We talked on Monday about the model of engagement with the 4 enablers. This is a similar model of engagement, but I think what's interesting is it captures and underpins so many of the key activities that we're talking about. It's from Deloitte, and it talks about a kind of irresistible organization. And the pillars are around, you know, helping people understand that their work is meaningful. So helping them have some levels of autonomy, that they're selected to fit. You've got some small empowered teams. So again, helping them feel like they've got that level, those levels of autonomy. And that there's a bit of time for slack. So you do have a bit of breathing space, time to have coffee, connect as individuals, as humans. That there's hands-on management. So we've got clear, transparent goals. So we've talked about the importance of that. Antonia even talked about that as, you know, what really motivates and drives her. That we're coaching, helping others to learn and grow. That we're investing in management development. So we're all here right now. And we've got some kind of modern performance management. Now on different yachts, you've probably got different kinds of performance management. I think where you have got formal structures, that's great. And if you've got, you know, performance management review forms and things, that's awesome. But I think the key elements of good performance management will always come down to you having regular conversations, making sure that communication is two-way, giving and receiving of feedback, and having clear goals. So you can have all of the forms, that's great, they serve a great purpose, but don't feel demotivated if you don't have that. Focusing on a positive work environment. So perhaps there's an element of flexibility, that we're humanistic, that there's a culture of recognition that we've talked about, and that we're inclusive and diverse. I think many of these elements that are in this model are also elements that will be built on in the second 6 weeks of this module, as you go into more details around kind of what does it mean in terms of the health and well-being of my team? What does it mean in terms of recruiting, retaining, having those HR procedures in place, and safeguarding mental health as well. That we also have some growth opportunities, so that there's training and support and development on the job, that we're kind of facilitating talent mobility. So that's kind of maybe looking at how you can rotate crew within your teams. That there's an element of self-directed and dynamic learning. So I think some of you are already engaging in that. And that how you can begin to create a learning culture. So perhaps something for you to think about in terms of how can you begin to create that learning culture on board. And some of you have given some great examples of what you're doing already in terms of like rotation or helping crew have exposure to different departments or doing different roles. And that ultimately that there's trust in leadership. So people are clear about like the purpose, and that you're investing in people, and that there's transparency and honesty, and that we can ultimately inspire and motivate our teams. And they argue that that's kind of like the foundational elements of that is also focusing on simplicity. So not trying to get too complex, not trying to get lost in the detail, but focusing on simplicity and those kind of key pillars. And I think that so much of what we talk about in these 6 weeks and that what you'll talk about in the following 6 weeks kind of align with these. So before we finish for today, has anyone got any questions or reflections from today's session? Put you all on gallery view so I can see you all. Has anyone got any questions? Caitlin says no. Victoria is a shadow. Marina, Kinga, Antonia, George, Sophie, Nadia. Any questions?
No, I have just reflections.
Yes, please.
After these sessions, I feel more motivated and
Great.
more organized and disciplined for achieve my goals. Sometimes I will do this, but my picture is very blurry. I will do, but I know I will, but it's no step by step. And
Yes.
now I am more like complete, and I will do step by step. I will write, because long time it's long dream, long goal, do skills certificate, English certificate. Now, after this session, I will sit down and write.
Okay,
right?
Fantastic.
Because I will do, but when, I don't know. It's okay. I will, yeah.
I'll do that later. Yeah, that I want to do
now,
that. Yeah.
Now I have no time. I haven't time. I will write down and I start to prepare.
Okay. Well, Antonia,
very
I'm going to hold you.
This session, very reflect.
Great. I'm going to hold you to account on that. And if you're joining tomorrow's session, I'm going to ask you for that. What's your SMART objective around your English?
Okay,
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonia. Any other questions or reflections before we finish? No. Quick reminder then on dates and times, because I know that we're kind of moving around a bit. Tomorrow we've got our usual 9 o'clock Friday session. We'll be building on communication, coaching, and using some action learning. So if you've got some kind of underlying questions that you're thinking about, maybe thinking about your personal development, that might be a time to bring those questions. If you've got any specific questions that you'd like me to cover, please drop me an email or pop that in on the forum. And then a reminder that next week our times change a bit. So on Monday, we're at 12 o'clock UK time. We're then on Thursday at 9 and Friday at 12. So just a reminder that our times are moving around a bit next week. I will stop the recording there.